Hello, everybody. Welcome to this video lecture, which is called Use Your Words. Congratulations! You have a language. Maybe you have more than one. Your language is a rich inheritance that represents the culmination of hundreds of thousands of years of human speech activity. Although you did not invent your language, it is nevertheless yours. It exists in your head and nowhere else in the universe. It is a key part of who you are as a person and how you exist in the world. It is your treasure and your glory, your sword and your shield, your power and your freedom. Part of writing well is cultivating a healthy reverence and awe for the gift of language, a miracle that is incarnated in you, your brain, your voice, your being. Words are the most conspicuous elements of language. You know about 42,000 of them in English. If you speak another language, you might have twice as many. If you read a lot in college, you might learn a few thousand more, but the core vocabulary of any language is all anyone needs to say pretty much anything that could ever possibly be said. There are other elements of language, including both grammatical structures and social codes, but words have a certain tangibility and friendliness that makes them very accessible and familiar. Over the course of the class, we'll be talking about grammar and syntax, how words are put together, but a great starting point for thinking about writing is to spend some time thinking about words themselves, those funny little units of meaning that play such a big role in our lives. Here are some things about words that are helpful to keep in mind. Words have a definition, a pronunciation, sometimes more than one, an official spelling, sometimes more than one, and an etymology. Although it's tempting to talk about words themselves as if they were things, words obviously do not exist in the world as physical objects. You can write a word down, but a word doesn't exist in any one instance of its appearance in print. The word itself only exists in the brains of language-using human beings, all of whom might have their own slightly different way of understanding what any given word means. The meanings of words can vary across regions and dialects, and they also change through time. Their spellings and pronunciations also change over time. The study of how words evolve over time is known as etymology. Looking up the etymological history of any given word in any language will quickly prove how chaotically words change over time, both in terms of how they're spelled and pronounced, as well as in terms of what they mean. In the interest of facilitating effective communication, dictionaries record official definitions, pronunciations, and spellings of words, but these dictionaries need to be continually updated to keep up with the natural flexibility of words as they are actually used by human speakers. There is a lot you can learn about a word by reading the dictionary definition, but as a living, speaking human, you actually know a lot more about the words in your vocabulary than any dictionary. There are different kinds of words. As you probably already know, there are several major categories of words which are known as the parts of speech. Although people express themselves effectively every day without knowing the difference between an adverb and an adjective, thinking about the role that different kinds of words play can help us to use words more impactfully. For instance, a noun is a concrete or abstract thing, and it usually provides the subject of a sentence, the thing that the sentence is about. In writing, more specific nouns tend to make more interesting sentences because they take us closer to whatever we're looking at. A sentence about motorcycles, specific, is likely to be more interesting than a sentence about vehicles, less specific. A verb is usually an action word, and the more active it is, the better. Motorcycles are more interesting when they race by than when they merely drive by. Adjectives are words that describe nouns, and used thoughtfully, they can transform a noun into a vivid mental image, a shiny blue motorcycle. Adverbs have a similar ability to add texture and nuance to actions. The motorcycle raced by wildly, in ways that further enhance the ability of words to work together to evoke meanings. Learning to recognize these different kinds of words helps improve the degree of control that we have over them as writers. Words connect you to the past and to other people. The first human languages likely emerged about 200,000 years ago among the first modern Homo sapiens. All of the humans who have lived since then have played a role in shaping the way human language has changed, diversified, and adapted. Each of the 42,000 words in your vocabulary has its own unique history, its etymology, that likely traverses centuries and continents and language families, the rise and fall of empires, historical accomplishments and atrocities, and the everyday conversations of grandmothers, babies, poets, and ordinary folk. If your family has been speaking the same language for a long time, some of these people might be your genetic ancestors, but it is much more likely that the language you speak, particularly if it's English, is a language that your family has acquired somewhere along the line, whether in the recent or distant past. It doesn't matter though. Language doesn't care about genetics. Language makes its own family, connecting you to other people who have used the language in the past, other people who use it around the world right now, and other people who will use it or whatever evolves out of it in the future. So on one hand, the language you speak is alive with the voices of billions of other people. At the same time, however, all of it is entirely yours, your voice, your language, your words. It is as if all the entire cast of human history has lived and died just so that you could inherit your 42,000 words. And they have given you complete freedom to use this power however you please, without any demands or conditions. Words can influence the way you see the world in positive and negative ways. As mentioned previously, words don't exist in the world. They exist entirely in your head. Another way of thinking about it is that what goes on in your head is largely made up of words, not only because you use them to think, but also because words can shape what we have intellectually available to think about. When you learn the name of a certain kind of tree, you may tend to notice that particular kind of tree more than the other trees whose names you don't know. You can probably think of other examples of how learning new words opens up new possibilities for thinking about new things in new ways. It is also the case that words are a product of the culture that uses them. So, in addition to their dictionary definitions, words also have cultural associations that conceal ideological values and biases. This is particularly evident in the case of words that are used to describe groups of people, which often have an ugly history of using language to dehumanize and marginalize those perceived as other. The good news is that language is endlessly flexible and adaptable, so that new social attitudes give rise to new words that can go on to shape people's thoughts and behaviors in more constructive ways. Folklore across cultures is replete with stories about magic words. Open sesame, abracadabra, Shazam, let there be light, etc. Words that have the power to make things happen in the physical world. All words are magic in this sense, since all human activity is facilitated by the power of words to motivate thought and action. Saying Shazam might not magically turn you into a superhero, but looking into a mirror and saying to yourself, I am a superhero, can literally make you feel and maybe even act like one. Words have enormous social power to raise consciousness and drive change, and this power means that they must be used responsibly. In the same way that words can influence your own way of thinking, seeing, and feeling, they also have the power to shape society at large. Indeed, history has been shaped by words since the Sumerian ruler Hammurabi published the first code of laws. Since then, the major macro trend in human progress has been an increase in tolerance, morality, and freedom. And this progress has been made possible by the passionate individual speakers and writers who have used their words to enlarge our capacity for empathy and our imagination of what is possible. The great religious teachers and writers, the philosophers and storytellers, the orators, advocates, revolutionaries, dissidents, and firebrands have expanded the horizons of our thinking and deepened our self-understanding simply by rearranging the same words that every language speaker has at their disposal, putting these old words together in new ways that open out into new futures. Wars come and go, violent regimes come and go, ignorant buffoons stumble in and out of history, but words stay. Words and the ideas they evoke have the power to transcend the meat grinder of history and live on to influence and inspire future generations. This means that as a user of language, you have enormous power, and it is important to think deliberately about how you plan to use this power responsibly.